we go. We're good to go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then take it away, Christine.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's program, Books Opening Doors, Prisons, Libraries, and the Resources that we share. And we're so happy that all of you are here to join us today. And we're looking forward to a great program. Before I begin the program, though, we do have a few housekeeping items. And I will begin by saying that the South Central Regional Library Council and the Central New York Library Resources Center are co-hosting this program today. And we are two of the 9 multi-type library systems comprising the Empire State Library Network. And South Central SCRLC, South Central Regional Library Council, covers 14 predominantly rural counties, encompassing 10,045 square miles, and we are headquartered in Ithaca, New York. CLRC covers 4 counties in central New York and includes Syracuse and the surrounding areas. And I am Christine Brown. I am the Outreach Services Librarian at SCRLC. And I'm going to be introducing the programs throughout the afternoon. Anna Dubkowski is here as well. She is the Resource Sharing and Outreach Coordinator for the Central New York Library Resources Council, CLRC. Anna is working to make sure everybody is in and able to access the program. And she's going to be monitoring the chat throughout the afternoon and sharing your questions with us. So if you have questions, please enter it in the chat. One more thing before I get into a few other things. The SCRLC offices occupy the unceded traditional homelands of the Gaia-Kahono people, and the offices of CLRC occupy the unceded traditional homelands of the Onondaga, which are 2 of the 6 nations of the Great Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We invite you to consider the history of your land, wherever you may live and work. And I will be posting a link to Native Land Digital. It's a great site that you can use if you're not sure where you're at, what the history of that land is. You can use this site to help you learn more about that. We also recognize that colonialism and the oppression related to it continue to create trauma for the Indigenous people today. And those of us who are not Indigenous can center and support Indigenous nations, organizations, and grassroots change movements through our time, energy, and financial contributions. And one example of an organization is the American Indian Library Association, and I'll share the link to their website as well. A few more things today. If you haven't found it already, closed captioning is available. It should be located at the bottom of your screen with a little CC. And if you want to engage closed captioning, please click on that. Throughout the presentation, you're welcome to type your questions and comments into the chat, and Anna will be sharing those with us. If you'd like everyone to see your questions and comments, please make sure that you select everyone in the drop-down menu at the bottom of the chat. And you've probably already noticed when you entered, but today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available and shared with all registrants. We will also be posting it on our YouTube channels, both SCRLC and CLRC. And the code of conduct was included in the registration process for this program, and we ask that you follow that. There will be a link provided to the evaluation form later in the program. So now I will begin going through our program. And our first item is a panel of librarians and education specialists who work in or with the prison system in several different roles. And I'm going to be sharing their names here, and they will have an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about their roles in a few minutes. So the panel members include Corinne Leone, and she's the Director of Library Services for the New York State Department of Corrections. And we have Aaron Kowalski, Principal Librarian for the New York State Supreme Court Law Library for the 5th Judicial District. We also have Maddie Reynolds, who is the Outreach and Information Services Librarian at Cornell University. And we have Douglas Smith, the Education Coordinator at Hillbrook Juvenile Detention Facility. And we also have Christine Dimitros. She is the Assistant Director for Student Learning at Syracuse University College of Law Library. And just to give a little more about what we're going to be doing today, after the panel discussion, there's going to be a health break during which we'll have a video of some artwork from the Prison Express program. After the break, we will have Gary Fine, Director of the Derlin Alternatives Library, present information on the Prison Express program. And after Gary's presentation, there will be a drawing for the book. And there should be some time for attendees to ask questions as well. We have some time set forth at the end. And there will be an evaluation form at the end. Okay, so to get started with our panel, I'm going to ask Corinne. You can take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone, or good morning, good afternoon. I wish it was morning. I'd have more time for today. I was asked to be here today and talk to you for 8 to 10 minutes and then take questions about Department of Corrections Community Supervision. I would like to start with that I am in great company with the panel that they have selected here. I know some of them, and I appreciate all the work that they do too. So thank you for having me. In August of 2016, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself first. In August of 2016, I was appointed to be the Director of Correctional Library Services. Prior to my career in corrections, I was a contract library director for Buffalo and Erie County Public Library in my hometown at a branch, where I had a new library built and a new charter administered to it. In January of 2007, I began my correctional career. And that was in Gowanda Correctional Facility. That facility has since closed. In my education background, my undergrad is from Medaille College, which again, we see another financial, and that is closed as well. It was in liberal sciences and business administration. I received my MLS from the University of Buffalo. And in 2015, I got my public library administrative degree from Long Island University. Many of you have heard me speak, most recently for WNYLRC, Western New York Library Resources Council, on correctional leadership. And I spoke with Kara Bradbury, who's a senior librarian. She has 2 libraries in Collins Correctional. So let's begin to open the door for prisons, libraries, and the resources we share. DOCS is responsible for the care, custody, and treatment of individuals sentenced to New York State prisons and works with individuals to ensure, I'm reading a little bit, so I want to make sure I give you all the information, to ensure reentry into our neighborhoods and our communities. I see we have a couple of former senior librarians on the line and some outreach coordinators. And later on, I'm going to thank all of you for what you do. You know, there are numerous facilities across New York State. The first New York State prison was opened in New York City in 1797. 20 years later, Auburn Correctional, which is in the middle of our state, opened in 1817. And it's still open today. And it's a reception center that we send incarcerated individuals out to be put in various facilities depending on what needs they have. We currently have 44 facilities, but 45 general libraries and 45 law libraries, and they're all under my purview. There's 15 max securities, 26 medium classification secured, and 3 minimums. And we're involved in all of those. I'd also like to tell you that we have librarians in DOCS, general libraries, which is one of the largest employers in New York State of senior librarians. There's one position, and that's mine, that is director of correctional library. There's an associate librarian who is Linda Klimchak, many of you know. And we have 46 librarians, all full-time, who come from a variety of backgrounds. We have one library clerk 3 just recently added to DOCS, which is Department of Community Supervision and Corrections and Community Supervision. I probably use DOCS most of the time. We have a number of library clerk 2s. We have a whole panel, which is the Incarcerated Legal Resource Program. That's a department that, when the incarcerated individuals can't get what they need from the law library, from the various texts and primary and secondary textbooks that we give them, they can write to the Incarcerated Legal Research, and we can give them the information they need, mostly records and briefs, but there's a whole gamut of things, some habeas corpus things and things like that. We have one civilian who helps in the law library, but all the rest are corrections officers. And they are not trained in law. Our choice was to give them a law library with, and it was a legal case, give them law libraries with as many resources as we can give them, or staff it with a professional with a law degree. So we chose give them as many, and we have counsel's office that oversees that umbrella of the law libraries. Each correctional facility is required to have a general library staffed by a professional librarian with MLS, and the librarian must also possess a New York State Public Library certification. And that's a grade 19 pay. And there's some perks that go with that. I'll tell you those later. All the libraries are mandated 42 hours unless they have a permanent variance that my office and counsel's office considers and grants for them, depending on their schedule and what happens there. The senior librarian wears many hats. They're the library manager, which is the administrator and the department head, and they go to department head meetings when the general library has no patrons. But when the library has patrons, they act as the reference librarian. So it's the reference librarian, the administrator who does the reference library. In library school, we all took a class on community analysis in public libraries. The same holds true for each correctional facility. Each facility has its own programming, its own demographics, and much more. Our patrons may wear the same clothes, but they are patrons, and they require a well-maintained collection of reference services and programming. The law libraries are separate, and they function in order for the incarcerated individual to challenge their conviction in terms of confinement. When an overall community analysis is done in a prison, we keep in mind things like, and I got this from Wikipedia, there are men and women imprisoned in New York State, and I'm going to read this so I get it right for you. There are men and women imprisoned in New York State prisons. 1 in 20 are women, so that's only 5%. 3 facilities are designated as women's prisons: Albion, Bedford Hills, and Taconic. Currently, the department does not provide statistics on gender diversity, those who identify as other than male or female. The average age of an incarcerated person in New York State is 40 years old. The proportion of incarcerated people over 50 years old in DOCS facilities is nearly 25% as of 2021. That's where these facts came from. It takes a few years. But as of 2018, according to the US Census Bureau, 48% of incarcerated individuals are Black or African American, only 25% white, 25% Hispanic, and a small number belonging to other categories. Those are always important to keep in mind when you're developing a collection. And we also know that those incarcerated individuals vary in education levels, which is not unlike the public library. DOCS offers different programs to those who require special considerations as well. Some need academic, of course, DWI, which is alcohol and substance abuse counseling. Some need anger management. Some need sex offender management. We also have in the prisons, which is quite different than many places. We have dog programs. We have different, like Positive for Heroes, Spirit, which is shelter pups in incarcerated settings. We have Puppies Behind Bars, and we have a new one called Pals, which is Puppies at Lakeview Shock, which we're pretty excited about. We also have a Second Chance horse program. Thoroughbred horses are sent to the facilities, and the incarcerated individuals are taught to take care of the horses. We have those in 2 different facilities. We have college programs, of course. No foster cats. And I'm not really reading the comments, but that one popped up. But we do have an assistant commissioner who wants the cats. Classes are offered like cosmetology, electrical trades, culinary. We also offer apprenticeships for when the incarcerated individual leaves our care and custody. And going back to the libraries, just a little bit about the facilities. Going back to the libraries, reader interest and motivation have a strong effect on comprehension. With that in mind, a correctional general library must contain a broad collection of entertainment, education, self-awareness, and those all should be current and up to date to meet the needs of the diverse population of our patrons and the mixed educational, gender, ethnicity levels. Our law library collections are recommendations from counsel's office and my office. We work together to bring primary and secondary resources. We have LexisNexis on a secure offender network, which is basically like the internet, but it doesn't go out into the internet. It's a closed form. We have Thomson Reuters Westlaw Correctional, which is a wonderful product. We have our counsel's office uses all of those products that we give to the incarcerated population. Our collections, but not in the law library, in the general libraries, are entertainment. And in the law libraries, I want to go back to that. The law libraries only have what we allow them to have. They don't have things for entertainment. They don't have things for education. They don't have self-awareness. It's strictly law library materials. But the general libraries, they keep up with the current trends. They have audio, visual, different periodicals. Their reading levels and the selection of materials are all varied. And we do that with the collection development policy. We all know what that is. And the budgets and sharing costs with other agencies whenever possible. We have plenty of reference materials, college texts. We have something called the College Corner in those facilities that have college programs, which is some of the colleges provide the books for their courses, for their coursework, and we have those as reference in the libraries. And we have so much reentry materials. The Reentry Transitional Services works tirelessly to bring the most up-to-date materials to the incarcerated population. So when they transition back into our communities, they have the tools that they need to come back. And along with that, our collection development policy is made possible. We have a separate part from the Division of Library Development, New York State. We negotiate with the public library systems. We have 12 public library systems under the auspices of New York State Library, and they provide $9.25 per incarcerated individual funding to help us hold programs and do different things with the librarians and with the programming. We also have a budget in-house, New York State, which is a little healthier than that. So with all those resources we can have the most up-to-date, and New York State has one of the best sets of libraries, I believe. But I can say that. So the facility discusses the use, us with the facility discusses the use of the public library resources, their services, and they help provide materials for the facility general libraries. The contracts are specific to each public library and to the facilities. We are so grateful to have that negotiation and that aid from the public libraries. The librarians enjoy the training that they get. They enjoy their outreach coordinators. In fact, there's nothing but pluses to say concerning that relationship. When all those budgetary and community details begin to ebb and flow, each facility librarian begins programming. Programming is a must, and it must be done quarterly. But some do it monthly. Some senior librarians love to program monthly. And I say must because we are driven by directives. Some of you know what the directives are. Some of you may not. Our directives are our policy and procedure, and they work in tandem to keep everyone within lines. All programming directives are available to the public. So what I'm saying is you can Google them. Am I over time? Okay. The directive, the main directive that provides guidelines for the general library, and there's one that's specifically for the law library. And while library programming in a correctional facility may be impossible, not only is it possible, but it is rewarding and usually pretty fun. While the incarcerated, their days get mundane and repetitive. So the library is an outlet for them to participate in the new and different activities. Library programs can give the incarcerated individual a sense of purpose or something to look forward to. As a senior librarian, as a senior librarian, you could have opportunities to be creative and do programming ideas. Whatever you come up with usually is most of the time well received. Working with incarcerated individuals as your clerical staff or participants as a program is as rewarding possibility as it can be most times. I really have not talked to a senior librarian that did not enjoy the programming. It could teach vital skills and supplement other areas of the facility. They can program a parenting program, teach them how to read to their children, which coincides with a parenting program. They could teach them how to journal, which coincides with alcohol and substance abuse. I need to take a drink. Because the general library is considered a 7-day-a-week program, the incarcerated individuals are scheduled 7 days. Some have never seen a schedule or a program performance evaluation. And we do both for the incarcerated individuals to teach them, again, for the reentry into the community. I'd like to tell you just a couple things about a couple programs that we have. I have some listed here on my notes. And if you want to know anything specific, I'm sure my email will be provided, but we put up vision boards, memory boards, things called words travel, writing contests, or writing programs. I did one called My Life, My Story. It was completely about their lives and their stories. And they could write an essay, do a poem, do a picture. And we had the admin team and somebody from the outside come to judge, and it was full of prizes. And it was a very rewarding program. We have free comic book day, the 9/11s, how to set a table and how to eat, dining etiquette, information literacy, public speaking, new year, new you. We do things like that. Living with inspirational quotes, Joke July, which is one of my favorites. We get authors to come in as speakers, and many facilities do monthly newsletters. I want to tell you about Book Showdown, but I think I'm going to take too much time for that. That's a book club that involves at least 100 incarcerated individuals at a time, and different disciplines like teachers and counselors, some COs and things like that. That is an amazing program if anybody's interested in knowing about it. In fact, as an end result, we the first time we did it, we had a 17-year-old who came to our care and custody, and he was having trouble with reading. He was off the charts with math. So we decided to develop this. I did it with one of the superintendents, and we developed this program called the Book Showdown. And during that summer, from June to September, his reading scores went from a 6th grade level to an 11th grade level. And 10th or 11th. I don't have that paper in front of me, but it's such a worthwhile thing that he ended up getting his GED before his 18th birthday.
That sounds like an amazing program, Corinne. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful programs. That is amazing. And we'll have some questions at the end. And next, I'm going to move on to Erin Kowalski, Principal Law Librarian at the Supreme Court Law Library for the 5th Judicial District. Go on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I actually have a small slide presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. Just bear with me one moment. Okay, are you able to see my slides? Yes? Okay, great. So my name is Erin Kowalski. I'm the Principal Law Librarian for the 5th Judicial District. And what that means is I work in Syracuse at the Supreme Court Law Library, but I also manage all of the other libraries within our district. So we have 6 across 6 counties. Again, I'm in Syracuse, but we have a library in Oswego, one in Watertown, in Lowville, one in Utica, and then lastly, one in Herkimer. We handle legal reference at all of these locations. They are open to the public. We help court employees with legal research, we help attorneys, and we help self-represented litigants. And what that means is people come in and ask us all kinds of questions, anything from needing forms to case law to various questions about legal procedure. We handle reference in person, we take phone calls, we take emails, and for anyone else that's not able to reach us one of those ways, we also take reference that is written to us on a piece of paper with pencil. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So we do get requests from incarcerated individuals very regularly at the Syracuse location here. Usually at least once a week, we get a stack of letters. And these are patrons that are asking us for cases. A lot of times they want laws, statutes, regulations. Legislative history is very big. They're asking us for items from our session laws. And then occasionally we also get requests for articles. And we fill these requests as much as we can. We do have some limitations in what we're able to provide people. We cannot fill more than 3 requests per week from any one person. They must send us separate letters with requests. So if they send us one letter that has multiple requests in it, we can only answer the first one, and then we instruct them to send them their other requests in separate letters. And we cannot fill more than 50 pages per request. These guidelines are not determined by us. They actually come from the Office of Legal Information, which is a department within the Office of Court Administration. So these are guidelines that are followed by all of the court libraries in New York State. Here are some examples of letters that we received very recently. This is typically what we get. We actually get quite a few letters from Marcy. All of them are written in the same handwriting, even though they are for different patrons. This is the majority of the requests that we get. Almost all the letters look just like this. This first one here is asking for a session law from 1867. The second one is asking a question about year of the revised statutes. We do have these old session laws. So this book from 1867, we actually have it on our shelf. But we're usually able to fill these requests by pulling the articles off of Hein Online so that we don't have to touch our old books and scan them. But if it's necessary, we are capable of doing so. And then this is an example of how we respond. So we actually write a letter back to the individual. We acknowledge that we received their letter. We give them the dates that we received it, because sometimes there can be a large gap between when they sent it and when we actually received it. We tell them what we have enclosed. So in this first letter, you can see that we shared with them the session law and the chapter they were asking for. In the second letter, one of our librarians here detailed the whole timeline of the revised statute. So that was actually a couple pages long, but I just have the beginning of the letter here. Okay, we do have some other limitations. So we can only provide material that they should not be able to request otherwise. So if they're in a state facility, they do have access to information, as Corinne was telling you about. They have the Incarcerated Legal Resources Program that they can make requests through. So if they ask us for something they should be able to request through docs, we send them a letter back letting them know that we're not the first instance to request this information. We tell them how to make the request. And that's it. This is the list that we would consult to see what they should have access to. So if they're asking for something that is included in this list here, then we do send them that letter and let them know that we're not the first place they should be going to with their request. And then again, for local correction facilities, it's a similar procedure, but we tell them that if it's something that their facility should have access to, they need to make their request through that administration. This is part of Title IX of the New York Code's Rules and Regulations, Section 7031.4. It gives a very detailed list of the items that they should have access to. So whenever they ask us for something that's within that list, we send them back to their facility administration. And this is not a complete list, but this is more or less most of the items that are within Title IX NYCRR. So anytime they're asking us for forms, we get a lot of questions for forms. We always have to refer them back to their administration to ask for those. There are some exceptions if they're asking for a specific form that is just for our court, for a local county court. We can provide those, things like name change packets. But if there's something that's either federal or statewide that's in a form book, we cannot fill that sort of request. And finally, I have just some examples of other letters. As I mentioned before, most of the letters we get are similar to the previous example with the very unique handwriting, but we also get all kinds of other formats, some of them harder to read than others. This person is asking for claim paperwork, which we actually were able to provide a claim packet for this individual. Here's another one. This person is asking actually for a Supreme Court opinion, which at first I wasn't sure why they would not have access to that, but I realized that this patron actually had completed their sentence and was transferred to a different facility. This Bridgeview facility is a special treatment and rehabilitation center. So they're actually under the Department of Health in this case. I'm not really sure what legal resources, if any, they have access to. So I went ahead and filled this request. The opinion was quite long, so I could only send 50 pages at a time, which is why we have a second request here. Here's another one. I had to block a lot of it out to maintain their privacy, but this was a patron writing to us about a newspaper article that was published about them. He says he was being harassed by other inmates because of it, wanted forms for claims. So again, we were able to provide a claim packet for this person. Here's some more. This one was asking for law reviews, and then the second letter here asking for some procedural forms. Those are in a form book, so we couldn't do the first few there, but we did provide the name change packet. And here's some more. A lot of times we get questions that are sort of bordering on legal advice, which we cannot provide. We can give specific material. If they ask us for, a certain law, we can give them that. This letter on the left was asking for what was, the best course of action to take. That's not something we can answer. We can't tell someone the right way to go about handling something. But it's sometimes tough to read these letters. He writes at the end that he's at Jamesville and they make it very difficult to get these things. He says he's indigent and can't afford 25 cents a page. So if they're being charged for the information they're asking for and they can't pay it, sometimes writing to us is the only option they have. The other letter here is just asking for different items. Again, we can only fill one request per letter, so we were able to do one and then had to write them back and say, please send us separate requests. Here's another one. I actually have a whole stack of letters from this individual who wrote to us many, many times over 2020. This was just asking for a specific section of law, so we were able to provide that. He writes in here that he's handling an appeal for his criminal case. We haven't received any letters from this person since 2020, so sometimes it just leaves a little food for thought of what has happened in their procedure. When we don't hear from them again, we always kind of wonder if things worked out or not, but sometimes we just don't know. That's all I have for you today, so I'm going to stop sharing. But I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Okay. I haven't seen any questions. Thank you very much, Erin. We appreciate that. And then I will move us into our next panelist, and that is Maddie Reynolds, the Outreach and Information Services Librarian at Cornell University.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Maddie. I'm also going to share screen. I have a little slide deck to give you some idea of what we're doing here in the Cornell Prison Education Program. So I am the librarian for the Cornell Prison Education Program. This position just started last August. I was the first person to ever work in this position, and before that, they'd never had a librarian before. So this presentation will mostly be giving an overview of the things that we've done, the projects we've started in the first year of this position. So as Christine said, my full title is Outreach and Information Services Librarian. I am actually employed by Cornell University Library, but I am paid. My salary is through a grant through the Cornell Prison Education Program. So it's very much a joint appointment. And that was really strategic for collaboration between these two entities and to make sure that we can get the resources from Cornell University Library, which has a vast amount of resources, into our prison education program. My task is to build a library program for incarcerated students to expand information access in the prison classroom. Before this, mostly students were relying on just information from textbooks or course readers. To introduce print and digital materials in our computer labs. So each of the prisons we work in, we have a computer lab where we can put resources. And we're also working on getting some print collections, which I'll talk about later. I do library instruction inside. And I also develop workshops and courses on research methods. So hopefully down the road, I will be creating some more full-length courses on how to do research for more full-length projects. I also am doing a writing workshop program right now. So going in and working on students with creative writing. Who are our patrons? So these are CPEP students. We offer an associate's degree in 3 men's prisons in upstate New York. So you can see the map here in Auburn Correctional Facility, which Corinne had mentioned, Cayuga and 5 Points. We used to be in Elmira, but we have just turned that program over to Corning Community College this past year. And we are hoping to launch a Cornell bachelor's program in 2024. So that's part of why my position was created, was to the thought that we will need more research materials for students, and when they are going to do a senior thesis or a project of that nature for a bachelor's degree. So here's just some photos from our classrooms. We have between 150 and 200 students. We took new cohorts at every facility this past summer. Students are admitted by an entrance exam. They have to have their GED to take the entrance exam. So it's still a very small proportion of each prison population. Many of the students are middle-aged, but we have students of all ages, from 20s through 80s. So we serve a variety of adult learners. And we have many of our students are current students. We also have a fair amount of graduates who have graduated with their AA in our program, and we still allow them to take courses. So our process for beginning services, first, I had mentioned that my position is funded by Mellon. So that's how we're getting the money for this program for library services. And as I had mentioned before as well, my position is housed in Cornell University Library. The first thing I had to do was get volunteer approval from docs so that I could go into the facilities. And then last fall, what I did first was have listening sessions with CPEP students and ask them what sorts of, if you have a library program, what sorts of resources would you like to see? A lot of students did talk about print resources. So bringing in, we have Encyclopedia Britannica on our computers, though it's quite old. It's, I think, from 2003. So students had asked, can we have more encyclopedias? Can we have more updated ones? Can we have more background reading materials, background for course materials? Students talked about what sorts of interests they had and getting reading materials for those interests. So people had mentioned philosophy, African-American history. Students were interested in having something like a library guide. So documents on how to use certain resources. And we talked about ways we could put PDFs on computers. So maybe perhaps having all the old syllabi from old classes on computers, having book lists from different classes so students could request books from the public library, things like sample resumes, and that led into resources for reentry. So students wanting more books on reentry resources such as searching for jobs, building credit, financial resources, financial literacy. And then some students also brought up the idea of databases, which we will get into in a moment. So just a few of the projects the main projects that we worked on throughout the course of the year. We did get JSTOR. So JSTOR has an Access in Prison initiative. It is a free index of their database that is offline. So it can be brought in via USB to prison computer labs. And this has, as I say, it's an index, so it doesn't have full text. Some of the entries for the journal articles have an abstract, but most of them just have metadata. And then what we do is we have students send requests and then we print them at Cornell and send them into the prison. So this is approved at Cayuga. It has been used. It was even approved before the pandemic and had been used for a class, but we got the updated version earlier this year, and we'd been using it for a class in the spring. It was also just approved at Auburn, and we just installed it, though there have been some computer issues there. I'm also kind of the de facto IT person, so we're working through that. And we're working toward approval of JSTOR at 5 Points, but it looks like it will go through. As I said, in Cayuga, I worked with a world literature course as a JSTOR pilot to kind of figure out what was a good timing for the research process, as it is quite different from researching on campus because students can't just have immediate access to the articles. So we have to have some weeks in between to deliver, for students to request, and then for us to get the articles and then to deliver them. And then to have another round so that, because students couldn't really tell what the articles were about just from the title, to just replicate that sort of iterative process of research. And I did some library instruction sessions as part of this. We talked about how to come up with the topic, how to have effective keywords, how to use Boolean operators because it's just a simple search box, and how to navigate the database in general, which is all great for navigating the internet after they're released, far beyond just using a library database. And as I said, we print the articles and then we deliver them usually through the instructor. Another thing that we've worked on is collection development. So we're making small print reference collections in the CPEP classrooms. We're using shelving. So at Cayuga, we actually do have the books in already, which is very exciting. We have them in shelves that are in our main classroom. We might need to use book carts at some of the other facilities. And I got all the recommendations for the reference materials from Cornell subject librarians here. So most of these items are encyclopedias, subject encyclopedias. We have anthologies for literature courses. And we also have a fair amount of document compilations. So especially for treaties and government documents, we have some books that are compiled documents. And we also have several of those for historical primary documents as well. We were very fortunate to get a $100,000 grant from SUNY for core collections. So this paid for, among many other things, it paid for these libraries and also our sort of core collections of textbooks. So instead of always having to buy new textbooks every year, we're having some collections of textbooks which we'll rent out to students. And so the way that this worked in terms of process was I made up the book lists. It's about 100 titles for our small reference collections. I submitted the book list for the facilities to approve, and then we are delivering them to the computer labs. And right now I'm just using LibraryThing as the catalog. So the students cannot see the catalog really. What I'm going to do is have a printed out version of the catalog for them to peruse, but just for our own bookkeeping, that's what we've been using. Just some barriers to access there. You see a picture of all of our textbooks ready to go in before the semester. And then the picture below is our computer lab at Cayuga. We do have to go through the media review process through docs, which can be kind of lengthy process. So we always have to build in time for that. And then, as I've mentioned, that we don't have internet access within the prisons. So we really need to rely on print collections and also anything that can be uploaded via flash drive, which we've been pretty successful in getting things into our computer lab. So just to end, to talk about what excites me about this work, I really got into this because I was a volunteer teacher with the program before teaching English classes. I really enjoy working with students, and that's translated over to library instruction. And I'm hoping to be able to have more one-on-one research consultations as we build the research program. As I also mentioned, I'm doing a writing workshop program, so I'm going into all facilities and helping to lead writing workshops. We're going to bring in some published authors to work with students over the course of the next semester. So that's all been really exciting for me. And just wanted to put out there, if there are other librarians doing this work, either from public libraries or from other higher ed and prison programs, please reach out to me. This is a really exciting and growing field right now. And I'm sure they'll also put my email in the contact list after the event. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Maddie. And that does sound like an amazing program, and I'm happy that they have you there to do that. Our next panelist is Doug Smith, the Education Coordinator at Hillbrook Juvenile Detention Facility. And Doug, you can take it away.
Great. I'm just going to share. Everybody can hear me? Great. Awesome. I'm just going to pull up my little presentation here. I got a few slides. Okay, awesome. So first, I just want to thank all the other presenters for all that great information, and also the CLRC, and especially Anna for reaching out, calling me actually in this exact desk a few months back. She called and just kind of explained to me what they were trying to do and asked if I wanted to present. And Then she told me the dates, and in the back of my mind, I was thinking about my wife's due date. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it or not, but here I am. I wasn't able to make the resource sharing session, but fortunately, I am here today. The baby's healthy. She was born last week, so yeah, I'm here to share some information with you. My name is Doug Smith, and I am a disclaimer. I'm not the education coordinator, but I do fill in sometimes in that role. I'm actually art teacher, but I've been here for 14 years. I started as a maintenance, and then I worked my way up to a detention home aide. Eventually joined the education team down here, and I've been teaching ever since, and I absolutely love it. And I look forward to sharing in the slides how we have partnered over the years with our local library system. For those who don't know anything about Hillbrook, we are in Onondaga County.
Doug,
and we are
if I can just step in for a minute. Are you sharing your slides yet? Because we're not seeing them.
Oh no! Yeah, I was sharing them. Hold on. Oh, wait a second. I'm so sorry about that. Hold on. Entire screen. Share. All right. Let's see if that works.
Now we've got them.
You got them? Okay. I apologize. Okay. So I'll go back so you can see that first slide. That's the outside of Hillbrook right there. So we are in Onondaga County. We are a county-operated facility. We're located right here in Syracuse, New York, and we are a secure detention center. And we deal with pre-adjudicated youth, meaning they can be here from 1 day to years, depending on their case, and then they decide what happens with them. But in the meantime, they are here with us in the facility. And to get a better idea about the facility, I just wanted to include a few statistics that I pulled from last year. Hillbrook, we service 13 to 19-year-olds. Our capacity is 50. A few years back, I think in 2020, we had an expansion, and I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with the Raise the Age legislation. But we were a smaller facility, and they passed the legislation, and we did have renovation to be able to house more youth. So our capacity is 50. We average anywhere from 35 to 42 individuals on a daily basis. And in 2022, we did see 187 youth. The average length of stay is around 77 days. And at any given time, we average on about 23 to 30 individuals that are in high school, and 18 of them, of the daily average is GED. They're enrolled in the GED program, and I will make a little side note here. I'm proud to say that for years we Raise the Age did change a few things. So when that happened, we were talking about becoming a GED testing site, and we have one little teeny tiny step, one step more to go to become an official GED testing site. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's the first time it'll happen in Hillbrook history. So shout out to my colleagues who really pushed that. Also, we saw 71 special ed students, and also 12 ELL students in 2020. This is a picture of one of the classrooms that we utilize, and actually that is going to be converted into the GED testing site. Now to the fun stuff. So when I started in 2009, like I said, I was doing maintenance, but when I did come down to education, there already was a partnership with the Onondaga County Library System. There was a librarian that would come up from a local library. And shortly thereafter, I came over. I believe she retired. So then it got passed down to a woman by the name of Becky McGuire. I have to give these women shout outs because they have been a huge help over the years. So Becky came in with a ton of ideas, and she would do monthly visits and bring all sorts of resources up. So for years and years and years, we've been working with Mundy Branch, and it's been a great partnership. And we also work closely with Central Library, downtown Syracuse, if you're familiar with that. And Becky actually moved down to Central, and through Becky, she hooked me up with Chris, Dewey, and Maggie. And I am so excited to have on the screen and share with you one of the projects that we did partner with Downtown Central. So as I said, I'm an art teacher, and I asked her if there's any space available to display some of the residents' artwork. So she said yes, and this is our second year displaying our artwork right downtown at the ground floor. So it was a great project, and it's a growing partnership, and I look forward to many years to come. It's a great opportunity to have the kids' artwork be displayed, and staff even have come back and said, hey, I brought my kids to the library this weekend to see the residents' work, and it's awesome. So there was tons of positive feedback, and we really appreciate that the Central Library was able to do that for us. And Maggie is an outreach, community outreach, does community outreach, down at downtown, and she's provided us with tons of resources, and that I'll speak about on the next page, as far as books, as far as GED testing materials, lots of good stuff. And then also in the recent past, Manlius reached out to us, and I was working with Kristen for a while, the community outreach person out in Manlius, and she also provided us with tons of great resources that we have on our shelves here at Hillbrook. So so these are hats made out of cardboard, and there's a little description of how we made them in the picture, and I just picked them up the other day. They were on display for 2 months, so that was a fun project. As far as library resources at Hillbrook, I'll say I'm really happy with what we have right now. Over the years, working with these women, it's been great because they've just continuously given us great resources. Becky came to me with this idea of getting playaways, and we started with a couple. I didn't know what they were. She explained them to me. I bought right in, and so now we went from a few playaways all the way to over 40. And this is a great resource for the kids to have in their rooms, or if there's some downtime back in the unit. We have some great titles, and they're a popular item here. So we also have magazine subscriptions that we put out for the kids. Consumer Reports is a popular one, believe it or not. ESPN and Sports Illustrated, as you can imagine. And I did talk about site visits by the libraries, and over the years, there's been some really cool programs and things that they have brought in. For example, they brought in like a robotics set where kids could construct these little robots, and they'd follow this path on the ground, kind of that working in that STEAM aspect. They even brought in a little easy bake oven, and we kids learn how to make cupcakes, and we had a great time doing that. And they've brought in video game system is like the Wii and Wii bowling, and we've had a great time doing that. Unfortunately, COVID, I'm sure everybody can agree that COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in everything. So we are working on getting all those site visits back up and running. I was working with Manlius for a while, but before the pandemic, we had all this great stuff going on. And another thing that I'll credit Becky with, is she set up a library card for us, and we offer. I always offer the new residents that come in, if there's a title that they're looking for that we don't have in house, I can always go down, and they've been really, really, really great as far as finding a book if we can't find it, or calling another library. And, you know, it takes 5 minutes to run out down to Mundy Branch or down to Central or even on Onondaga Free right up the road, and getting that book for the kid and bringing it back. And one other thing that Becky would always say when she came up here was she would tell the kids that she would take care of all of their fines. So that was a really cool, funny thing that she would always do when she came up, and always invite them when they left Hillbrook to always come and visit the library, which some of them did. So future plans at Hillbrook. I am happy to share with you that I heard recently in the recent past that we will be expanding off of the education wing, because, you know, real estate is at a premium, and, you know, you can never have enough. And with these older individuals, you know, we got to start thinking about vocational pathways. And when we were talking about that expansion, you know, hopefully have a dedicated vocational space, maybe a wood shop, or maybe a culinary class or something like that. But I requested that there be a special dedicated library space that they create. And right now we don't have a set library space. We have shelves in each room, and we also have shelves in each unit where the books are located. So if I do get that space, which hopefully I do, I would love to possibly set up a whole entire system, and even give, you know, some of these older residents who have graduated and are looking for something to do, maybe take care of the library, and they can learn how to sort and check out and inventory books. So, you know, big plans, and hopefully it happens. But I'm very happy with the relationship that we've had, and just really a big thank you to the Onondaga County Library System for always maintaining that relationship with Hillbrook. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Sounds wonderful. And now we'll move on to our last panelist here, and that's Christine Dimitros, the Assistant Director for Student Learning at Syracuse University College of Law Library. Christine?
Yep, thank you. I did put together a few slides, not too much, but to just show some of our services that we do provide for students. So, I'm so used to providing for students, for incarcerated people. So I hope that you're looking at my slides right now.
Yes, we see them.
So Maddie and I did not coordinate this, but I was so happy to look like we did. So basically, the first thing I'm going to mention is, and one thing that makes us maybe a little bit more like the Supreme Court Library, is that we, our prime patrons are not the incarcerated. Our prime patrons, as you would assume, are the Syracuse College of Law students, faculty, staff, and then we go to kind of the rest of the university patrons. But we are open to the public, and so we do provide reference services to members of the public, and that is where our services to the incarcerated come in. So the services we offer kind of, I was thinking, break down into 3 sections when I was thinking about this. So first, we have our pro ses. And so in legal speak, pro se is someone who's representing themselves. And we do occasionally have family members or friends of incarcerated people who physically come in and are doing some research on behalf of their friend or family member. And so that really, to us, is just like someone coming in and doing research on their own behalf. You know, we kind of see that, we see that in, you know, we don't really ask necessarily who is this research for or what is it about, but we're happy to have people come in. The the thing to note if you're sending someone to our library is that we are only open to the public for limited hours because of the building locks down. So we're here right across the street from the Dome, and we're open to the public Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Most of our services for the incarcerated come in the form of letters. And one of those types of letters, and this is very similar to what Erin was showing, is individuals, and they send letters requesting particular materials. And so if they provide a specific citation or a title to an article or something that we can clearly define, or they have clearly defined what it is they're looking for, then we will copy it and send it to them. We do not charge for the service. I will mention at this point that in my prior career, I was in a different academic law library in New York City, and their process was that if they would get a letter from a prisoner, then they would find out how many pages the answer would be, write them back and say it's going to be this much money, and only send the item once payment was received. We at SU, we don't have that policy, so we see it kind of as part of our public. Even though we're a private university, we do still have a librarian public mission in mind, and so we kind of count it as that. So if we have the item and it's a reasonable number of pages, then we will send a copy for no charge. When I say reasonable, we don't really have a set number. Like I think someone had a set number of 50 pages. So we, as long as it doesn't violate copyright, like copying a whole book, or isn't going to take staff forever to put together, then we kind of do it on a case-by-case basis. The other thing to note is that we do have, a number of research databases in law, but our licenses with many of those databases prohibit us from using them for members of the public. So for instance, our academic subscriptions to Westlaw, Lexis, Bloomberg Law, we are not allowed to use that for anyone outside of the law school. So even if the provost calls me up at reference and says, oh, I need a Westlaw password, I have to tell her no, because she's not a member of the law school community. So it's not that we're picking on the public, it's very specific and restricted licenses. And then the other type of letter we get is individuals who send letters requesting general assistance. And most of the time, what we try to do there is refer them to an organization that can help them. If they're looking for legal advice, we're prohibited by law from providing legal advice, so we do not do that. We do not provide research for members of the public either. And so what that comes down to is if someone says, oh, can you send me some information on, I don't know, child custody or whatever topic they're interested in, we will not do that, because that's a research project. If someone says, can you send me this section of the legal encyclopedia that deals with child custody, we're happy to copy that and send it to them. And part of that is because in law librarianship, the idea of actually doing the research and interpreting, because all of research includes interpretation and analysis, is considered the practice of law. And so we're very restricted in what we are allowed to do for members of the public. So these are just some of the typical referrals that we do. There's the Prisoners Legal Services of New York. We use a lot, we direct people to New York State Defenders Association, depending on how far along their case has gotten. We do have, and then in physical form, we do have scans of the Jailhouse Lawyers Manual Directory of Legal and Social Services for incarcerated people, and we'll mail that to people. And we have a physical scan, and then we'll print out the New York State Prisoner Justice Network directory. And it all depends on the type of letter that the person, or the type of assistance the person's asking for, what we'll refer them to. And over here on the right, I just put in one of our typical kind of if they don't ask for something specific, this is a kind of the form type letter that we would work from, and then maybe adjust depending on what they were asking for. So, it's just, we don't have a system here at the law school that can provide you this assistance, but we look at these other organizations, and if you find a citation to a particular item, write back, and we're happy to provide that. So I thought this would be a good kind of visual showing of the different prisoners between different prisons between 2017 and 2023. These are all of the prisons that we've gotten letters from, and so you can see which logically mostly from New York State prisons. Randomly, we got one from Georgia and one from a federal prison in California. I don't know how or why they found us, but we're happy enough to help them. But you can see, other than Long Island, which we haven't quite broken into yet, we serve a lot of the state of New York. And then this is a little table of, again, the same years, 2017 through 2023, of the different prisons that we have sent responses to. Some of these, like Marcy, you can see is like the far and away winner of our number of responses. But some of them are just one-off, a random request, and we'll answer it. We do have some repeat requesters. And, the one who has written us, I think, the most was, I'm trying to think, I think I put his years in here. From 2019 to 2023, we've gotten 10 different letters from him. And, we respond as long as it's items that they're looking for. And, we're happy to send that. But, he's kind of moved throughout different prisons and continues to reach out to us. And then the other kind of thing I went through and counted just for statistic purposes is, I would say the person we've sent the most documents to was, in the course of 2 years, and I think it was 2020 and 2021, we sent one prisoner 59 printouts of Department of Corrections directives. So just like you saw in Erin's presentation, a lot of the prisoners say, well, I can't get my hands on this, or we don't really, as opposed to the government offices, we don't really say, can this person find this somewhere else? We just say, do we have it? Is it within non-legal research, non-legal advice? And as long as it's not burdensome, we will send it. So whether or not this particular incarcerated individual actually could have gotten those directives on site, we don't really we don't have any regulations above us that tell us, oh, we can't do that if you can get it somewhere else. So we just kind of treat it as if someone walked in and asked us for something, any one of our patrons. And then finally, this was just to show you we're not inundated with these questions, which may be why we're allowed to be a little bit more open with how much time we spend on it, or how open we are to answering these questions. Because I think our biggest, it actually looked like, when I was pulling these numbers together, I was like, oh, look, we're going up every year. And then 2023, we somehow fell out of favor and didn't get a lot of requests. But, our reference department, I tend to do the answers, but sometimes other members of our reference department will answer the questions. And honestly, we just treat it as if it were any other reference question, with the same restrictions that we're allowed, that are on every reference transaction we have because of those license limitations. That's kind of all I was going to say, you know, as again, we do much less of this than all of the other panelists, but we do see it as part of our overall mission to, you know, advance knowledge in members of the public as much as we can as a private university. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. but that's it. So let me stop share. How do I stop share? Oh, this is interesting. I don't see a stop share here. Did I stop share?
No, if you click on it should be a little button.
Stop share. I see it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. That was great. A lot of useful information, and I know Anna has a bunch of questions, so she's going to start sharing those.
I have been writing these questions down, and there's a lot of great information. So I'm very thankful that we have enough time here. We were supposed to go to 2:45. So I'm glad that we have time for these questions. And thank you, everybody. It was amazing. I think what I'll do is I'll go in order instead of just kind of randomly throwing things around. So Corinne, I have a couple for you if you'd like to go first. How do you accommodate patrons with disabilities, such as blind, low vision, or learning disabilities? Do you have Braille and audiobooks?
We partner with the New York State Library with TBBL, Talking Book and Braille, and they provide quite a bit of materials and recorders and things like that. We also have, of course, large print in the facilities, and we have a Office of Diversity that provides SD readers and things like that for our law libraries, and mostly it's for the law libraries and different disciplines throughout different computer labs and things like that. Did I answer all of it?
That was great. Yes. And this actually came from me. I know that you gave an example of one of your programs, but could you give us one other example of the programs that the recreational programs or the additional programs that the librarians and yourself offer to the incarcerated peeps?
There's a multitude of them. One, actually, we just got a proposal for Timbuktu to go to Adirondack, and it's a display. They had it in 2013, but it has to do with history and much interaction for things like that. Let me see. I have a whole list of them. I brought it with me just in case someone asked, and thank you for asking, because that's one of my favorite things is programming. We have financial. Well, we teach them how some of the transitional services do too, but we teach them how to do money strategies and things like that. Let's see what else. Etiquette, that's a great one. That's one of my favorites. We show them how to set a table and how to properly eat and how to use manners. Yes, that was the tea with the cup up. Yes, with the finger up. That's a great one. Joke July, that's one of my favorites, and that's one that I got from Finger Lakes. And it is, they can write a joke, they write their own joke, and they get a better bookmark if it's authentic. But they can write a joke, and then the librarian would have to say okay for it, because it can't really not be politically correct. We throw it into a bin, and then as the incarcerated individuals come in for the library program, they can pick out, they have to stand, they have to show their best speaking voice, and their posture and things like that. They present the joke, and if they get laughs, they get better gifts. So that encourages them to keep writing and creative thinking and things like that. And they don't even know that it's a good thing for that we're giving them, opening their minds up a little bit.
Thank you.
So
That's great. I mean, I think we could all use something like that. That's fabulous.
I agree.
I have another question for you. Share a little bit more about your book club program.
Oh, the book showdown. I think that's what got me my promotion to be director, because I came from, I was the first librarian in Docks to ever be promoted from the field. And I went right to the top. And that book showdown it was just something that Buffalo, but I volunteer and I still do for the book Battle of the Books that they do for 5th to 8th graders. And I thought, what a great idea to do for adults. And we still use the books from Battle of the Books. In fact, the Buffalo County Library donates 30 books every year, and the questions that they write. And then I take the questions and I formulate them more for an adult population. But still, I always believe that a good reader could read down, but a bad reader can't read up. So we do this. It's more of a Jeopardy style, but it's not really as staunch as Jeopardy. It's more fun. Like we would ask, what color hairnet did Betty wear? And the first round would be easy questions, and they'd graduate to harder questions. And eventually we'd go and have the face off with how many teens. And it just is amazing how they responded to that book club. Because I was never one to read a book and sit around in a circle. I wanted to make it fun. So, and that's just, and I ended up doing 3 a year. Some of the facilities only do 1 now because it's so much work. But I have all the questions, and if anybody ever wants to see one, we have one coming up with at Collins Correctional. So if you want a volunteer application, let me know.
Thank you. Let's see. I know that Gary will be addressing this a little bit later, but there was a question about any prison newspapers that are currently in publication that you know of in New York State.
I do not, and Gary's the master at that. So
whoever asked the question, hang in there and listen to Gary a little bit later. Okay. Yes. Aaron, you did answer the question. The question for Aaron was, how are the requests? Oh, that's my question. I'm sorry. How are the requests sent to the inmate? For example, that 50-page request. How do you send those out?
Yeah, we actually mail it right back to them. We have to be very careful about how we do that too. We cannot staple the pages. We cannot include any paper clips. We cannot use an envelope with any metal clasp on it. So it's just all loose pages and a big envelope, and we just mail it right back to them.
Is there a limit from the prison department itself that says 50 max, 100 max, anything like that?
Not that I know of. I mean, it's possible that the guidelines given to us from OLI were meant to be the most permissive across all of the different facilities. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I will also say that a lot of times we get requests for the same material over and over again from the same patrons. So I do think that in some cases they are not able to keep what we provide for them. So sometimes they continue to ask when we just mail it to them again and again and again, as many times as they ask.
Great. And then there was a question about, do you get requests from former incarcerated people often? And you did write, not usually by letters, they come and they stop by and say hi.
Yeah, they still continue to visit the library. I have not recognized anyone that has written to us, but we certainly have a lot of patron visits that were formerly incarcerated.
Thank you. Maddie, you ready for some of your questions? Is the grant an ongoing one? Is the position limited to the grant runway?
Yes. So it is a 3-year term on the grant. So it's possible that we could then renew the grant or apply for more funding. I've also heard that I could also potentially stay in this position if the library creates the position and is willing to fund it. So there are multiple pathways, but yes, it is a 3-year grant funded timeline.
Thank you. And also, any interaction with the facility librarians? How is your reaction with them?
Yes, so I have met with the facility librarian along with Corrine at Cayuga Correctional Facility. So we went there, we talked with the librarian, we were able to see the collection, talk about potential collaborations on programming. Something that I would like to eventually do is potentially to have an interlibrary loan service from Cornell that's sent through the library, possibly because they already are doing that with public library system. But yeah, so I met with their librarian. I have not been able to meet with the librarians at the other facilities. I know at Auburn the position was vacant for a while, but I would like to be able to do that. And we actually at Cayuga, we have about a 500 book collection in the general library, and then that catalog is on our computer. So those books were all purchased by CPEP and sent in. We would love to have something like that in the other facilities. I know that there is, I think as Corrine mentioned, there's this College Corner happening, though we have not been involved in that so far.
Thank you. A comment. At my previous institution, we were trying to work out how to provide an associate's program for incarcerated individuals, but they couldn't access electronics or the internet. They weren't allowed computer access. Do you have those rules, and how do you work around that? Hard to make use of a database when you can't use a computer.
Yeah, this is a great question. So yes, we don't have any internet access. Yeah, I think at no New York State facilities have internet access right now, at least not at the maximum security or medium security level. There are talks about, that might be potential in the future. We are very fortunate to have these computer labs, which we installed right before the pandemic in all 3 of these facilities, but we were also in Elmira up until earlier this year, and we had never installed a computer lab there. So we were only at the beginning of library services at Elmira, but I do think that without the computer lab, it is harder. We would be able, if we were still in Elmira, we would have been able to do this print reference collection, I think, if that had been able to be approved by that facility. So that's something that if people are interested in doing library services, having some sort of print collection, if the facility agrees to that. But yeah, in terms of databases, it's quite hard. I would say then they're trying to forge some sort of relationship with the librarian there could be a good idea, because I know at least at Cayuga, they have their own catalog system, and I think that they're plugged into the public library catalog system. So if that could be a possibility for sending books in, that might be a good way to do it without having any computer access.
Thank you. Do you use JSTOR Prison Newspaper Project?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I have heard of the newspaper project. I've been in touch actually with some of the creators of it who are trying to find more prison newspapers across New York, especially historical prison newspapers. They had asked us about some historical newspapers at Auburn. So that's really great work. We have not actually used it within the prisons. I think right now that collection is only online. I don't think that they have any access to those newspapers in the offline database that we have access to, though that I think could be a really cool project. If sometimes what we're doing now is we're doing an archive project. So we're taking Cornell digital collections, downloading some of the artifacts from it, putting it into PDFs, and then sending it in via USB to our computer labs. So I feel like that's something that could be done in a computer lab model. Like we could have just curate elements of the newspaper database if we wanted to look at a cross section of different newspapers and send them in. That could be a really cool project. So that's an awesome idea. I would love to try something like that.
See, you didn't think you'd walk out of here with more work, right? And I have tell me more about the DOCC, the Docs Media Review.
Yeah, so each state has their own media review for correctional facilities. The policies are published. Actually, the Marshall Project is working on getting them all collated so that people can compare them side by side and see what are all the different rules. And so this is, what types of media are restricted, but also certain vendors. Some states they can't have certain vendors send the books in. Some states can't have hardcover books. Fortunately, here we don't have any sort of vendor restrictions, I don't think, and we can do hardcover books. But there are these policies, but it can also be kind of discretionary by the facility, whether a book may violate certain parts of their policy. So that's why we have to send in. Usually what we have to do for our textbooks is we have to give our textbooks to education staff, and they then approve them for us. And then we have to send them, I think, through the package room, and they have to go through make sure all the books are fine. I don't know if they x-ray them. There's something, but they have to go through a whole process, and we can't actually bring them in ourselves usually. And then that can take a fair amount of time. So we usually have to do that before the semester. The same thing for our USBs. So if we have content on a USB, usually we have to say that's a film or PDFs or anything else. We have to send that in, usually to the education staff. And then sometimes that will have to get kicked up to the superintendent level where they have to review it. So that can also take, I just had a USB that I was kind of kept waiting for. So sometimes that can take a long time to kind of be processed. So that's usually the media review that we'll have to go through.
Thank you. Alicia just wrote that she's limited to paperbacks as far as books. So it basically prohibits textbooks and a lot of some of the newer materials that are not in paperback format. Thank you for that comment, Alicia. Doug, do you allow internet access at your facility?
Great question. So we went, I want to say maybe back in 2016, we went to a computer-based education model. It's a credit recovery model where residents have a list of classes on a website where they can log in and they work at their own pace with the support of a teacher in the room. And it is on the internet, but we have a system in place called Jamf. It's a third-party mobile device manager, which restricts websites to whatever you want to restrict or allow. And we have around 5 websites that we allow. GED site, there's a typing site that we use. There's an OSHA certification site. There's Edmentum, the main program that we do use. And there might be one more. But yeah, it's internet access, but restricted with restrictions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have missed this. I saw in your slide that you said you have 77 residents. Is that your capacity?
The capacity is 50. We daily average is 37 to 42 or 36 to 42.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And sexes. Is it only one sex? Is it both sexes?
Yep, both.
Both.
Yep.
Okay.
And that happened when the Raise the Age legislation was enacted, and there was some monies to expand the building, and there is a dedicated female unit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question here for you, Christine. Do you get patrons or questions from people in immigration detention?
We have not. So the list that I put out of the prisons, that's the only ones we've gotten in the last 6 years.
What about you, Erin?
We do, but we also have lots of staff members that answer this 1-800-COURT New York helpline. So that's a statewide helpline where people call from all over the state to ask any kind of legal reference question. So we often take calls on that line from people in all kinds of situations. So we just help them with whatever they need. Usually it's some kind of referral to legal services. So they're looking for some kind of counsel for a family member who is detained. And so we'll do some research to provide it. We can't give a specific referral. Like, I've heard this person is really good. We can't do that, but we can give a list of generic, resources, places they might call to get a referral, like a bar association, that sort of thing.
I find legal language so dense and difficult to parse. Can incarcerated people get a crash course in understanding basic terms and the different types of legal documents? Or do they generally just teach themselves through accessing the materials and figuring it out? Who wants to take that one on?
I mean, I can answer, as far as I'm aware, is we at our library, we don't provide service programs for incarcerated people. Now, if it was requested, we may, if someone asked us to go do it. I'm not saying we wouldn't, but we haven't to this point. So the people that we deal with or that we respond to, they pretty much pick it up on their own or with assistance from the court, the law library or the library or fellow prisoners, because sometimes there's some that are more familiar with the system and the lingo, and then they seem to help other incarcerated people that they know. Like, we recently got a letter from someone who said, he asked for some materials, and some of it was for his assistance to other inmates.
Carrie just put in the chat that there are new ALA guidelines on serving people who are incarcerated or detained. It's about to be published, and there's a link in there because she said that it hasn't been updated since 1992. So if you're interested, please click that link in the chat.
I also can answer to that about teaching legal research.
Legalese. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We have a legal research course that every incarcerated individual is allowed to take if they have their GED or high school equivalency. And we teach them, it's a 40-hour course, and they can take the course. Some take the course to work in the law library. Some take the course to just familiarize themselves with how to do legal actions. We also are working on something with New York University with those who do not have GEDs or SHCs. We're in the final stages of that with counsel's office, and it's a big booklet on how to do legal research. So they are trained. They are whether they listen or not, I don't know. But some are very, very good. And the term jailhouse lawyer is a relevant term, and it's in courts. It's sometimes they look at it just like a lawyer, which is I guess great, because some do pick it up quite easily.
Thank you. Maddie answered in response to the question about REJI and BARD. We haven't had a lot of direct collaboration with other HEP programs in New York State, but we are starting. We had a symposium this summer where we invited Hudson Link, BARD, and SUNY, as well as former student who works with REJI now. We're trying to coordinate more between programs so that we can help students transfer to facilities where they can continue their education. Thanks for adding that, Maddie. And then I have a question that actually Christine Brown and I discussed, months ago when we first were trying to put this together. And I don't know if any of you could answer this, but I'm curious about the medical research that someone that's incarcerated would do. Let's say, for example, they're diagnosed with, a cyst, right? They have a cyst. Where would they go for that medical information just to kind of, they can't go to MediD or, whatever, the medical websites are, or WebMD. So do they go to their librarian, and then the librarian then finds that medical information for them?
The answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
We advocate for medical, if we have any medical resources, they should be 2 years, and additions should be 2 years and to now, and or they can utilize interlibrary loan, and they can use their assigned offender counselor. So sometimes they can send something to their counselor and ask if they can, meet with medical. They do have medical. They just make an appointment like a doctor. They could go to medical if they want, or they can get things through ILL, or we have reference materials.
Okay. So ILL is available to them. Thank you.
Yes.
And Corinne, while you're on screen, there's another question for you. Is there any possibility of public libraries, library systems, or resource councils coordinating with docs to make signing up for a library card part of the re-entry process?
Yes. Buffalo County, Buffalo County Library does do, they help with resumes. They come to the library and they do resumes. Sometimes they set up emails, and they get the library card ready for the incarcerated individuals. I am not sure about the rest of the public library systems, but that's certainly something that we would entertain helping with.
So we'll just approach you on it, any of the systems or any of the library councils can approach you on that.
Any of the great ideas. I heard so many ideas and so many things that we're kind of doing separate, but we should all be together, like sending out the 59 directives or 59 copies to a directive to an incarcerated individuals. They have the directives online. We give them a secure offender network, which is like what they were describing at the juvenile, but they're there. They can print them out. They can take them with them. They can request them. So, but they're not, I don't know, but things like that are so easy that we can all collaborate with. And it's just one of those things that this is a great discussion. I love it.
All right. One more from Sarah. She said, has anyone looked at, there's a website there for you to link. It's Google Office Apps, special for incarcerated populations. Okay. And I'm going to mute myself and take it away, Christine. Thank you, everybody. Mwah. Thank you.
Yes, and I share Anna's thank yous. This was great. I've learned a lot, and I'm happy that we had this opportunity to hear from all of you. And now we are heading into the break, but I've got just a couple of things to say. First, right after the break, Gary Fine will be here talking about the Prisoner Express program. There were a couple of references to Gary during the panel discussion. And so he will be here to share that. But I do have one of the programs for the Prisoner Express program is sharing of artwork by prisoners. And we have put together a video, and during the break, I'm going to be running the video so you can see some of the artwork. There's some art and there's some poems and it'll be running through the break. We'll be back right around 3 o'clock and continue. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and we're now at just after 3 o'clock, so we're ready to move into our next part of the program, and that is with Gary Fine. He is the director of the Durland Alternatives Library, and he has spent many, many years creating the Prisoner Express program, which is part of the Durland Alternatives Library. It's done with many volunteers, and he is here to tell us all about it. So take it away, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I relish the opportunity to share with you what we're doing. I've been sick today. I hope my voice will carry me through. I also had a lot of stuff at work that I was going to share with you, but it's all at work, so I'm going to be more extemporaneous in explaining what we do, but it should work fine. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about the Durland Alternatives Library because it's a resource you should all know about as librarians. We're located on the Cornell University campus, but we're not a Cornell library. We have an endowment, and the purpose of our endowment was to have alternative perspectives on current social issues. And it was also given to us in recognition that people are getting more and more separated by technology, and the library was meant as a place for people to come together and interact. I began working there in '99. Maybe in the year 2000, I got a letter from a prisoner, Danny Harris from Texas. And Danny wrote to me that he heard my library sent books to people in prison and asked me to send them some. And I wrote him a letter saying, oh, sorry, no, we don't have anything like that. But it was a friendly letter, and I inquired about his life and stuff. And he wrote me back and thanked me so much for treating him like a real human being and for taking the time to write and how much that meant to him. And I thought, well, I got a room full of old books. I could send him some books. That's not a big deal. And I sent him some books. And I got one of these Christmas in July letters that explained like that books, reading and writing were how he stayed sane, that he was in a cell 23 hours a day that had no windows. Once a day for an hour, he'd go to another cell that had no roof, and that was his outside time. And other than that, he was in isolation, and books really meant a lot. And from there, I started sending books to a number of people. I'm not sure how Danny heard about the library or how anybody heard about it, but in some kind of way, I had a few people I was sending books to. And then a local group in town that had been sending books to New York State prisoners had a stack of letters that were from out of state. And I said, yeah, if you give me the letters, I'll send some books to them too. And so pretty soon I'm sending books to 20 or 30 people. This is, the year 2000, 2001. And it was very satisfying. The prisoners really appreciated it. And the numbers kept jumping because they would share with people, hey, here's a place to get free books. And well, who wouldn't want free books if you're in prison? And they were customized packages based on what people wanted. And all the people getting books kept writing back the same thing. I'm going crazy. I hate everybody around me, especially people who are different than me. I can never tell people how I really feel, and mail is the most important thing in my life. And by now there's 50, 100 people getting books, 200 people. It grew pretty fast and pretty quick. And I was not able, I kept taking that in, but I could not write back to the individuals because it just was too much for me. I couldn't even imagine how to do it. So I came up with an idea, and I said to them, I'll give you a topic every month to write on. And if you can write a true story about that topic, we will type up everybody's story. We'll put it in a little packet. We'll mail it to you. So you'll have reading material on a monthly basis because they couldn't get books that often. There were so many people getting books. You might get books once or twice a year. But you get a packet to read of everybody's writings. And it's something I can share with you. Well, the people who are getting books kept writing, I'm going crazy. I hate everybody around me. I can never tell people how I feel. And the people who started getting these packets after a couple of months of reading them, their letters changed dramatically. And they wrote, oh, I thought I was going crazy, but him, her, they, just what they said. That's exactly how I'm feeling. I'm not going crazy. I'm in a crazy making place. The second thing they wrote was, oh, I thought I hated black, brown, yellow, pink, green, orange people, but him, her, they, just what they said. Yes, that's more my family than anybody. That's exactly how I'm feeling. That's exactly what's going on. That's exactly who I am. And the third thing they started writing was, wow, I want to share my story just like somebody else shared their story. I want to talk about what's going on for me instead of crying myself to sleep at night. And I realized that something was really powerful in reading each other's writing. I thought that writing was going to be the answer, but it turned out to be reading. So I'm going to share something now. Let's see, hopefully it will work. So can you let me know if you can see my screen?
I'm not seeing it.
Okay, let me try again. Let me minimize that. Let's see here. I'm so sorry. I'm pretty poor on this stuff. Oh, now I've really gotten myself lost here. Let's go back to the Zoom. But you don't see the screen.
No.
Okay.
Did you click on the little green share screen?
I think I took myself out of the Zoom thing here altogether. So I'll just keep talking while I figure out where's the Zoom link. Is this the Zoom link here?
Should be able to see it on the bottom. It's a little Z in a blue box.
Yeah, I don't see a little. Well, you hear me, so I got to be there. It's not on my.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I've done what I've done. Well, I'll keep talking and explain it while I get to it, and eventually I'll find it. That's interesting. Why don't I see it anywhere? Let me see if I empty everything off my screen. Anyway, I started sending. No, it's not anywhere on my screen, but you hear me, so it has to be here. Gallery, settings. Once again, I've screen share. No, I don't have. What? Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I had this all down. Well, I'm going to keep talking, but I don't see myself or anybody. So anyway, I started mailing out these packets to all the prisoners, and their responses were such that I realized them reading each other's writing was really a powerful thing. And I started a newsletter that I would send out every 6 months. And I really want to get my screen up again. Let's see. What did I do? Can I try it one more time? Is it? Boy, I'm going to lose all you, aren't I, here with this?
Gary, we can see you. Your screen needs to come down a little
Yes,
because
you
your
can.
chin is cut off. But
oh, geez. So not only that, yeah, I'm searching my screen dramatically for my meeting and why I lost it just now. I have all these icons, but not the meeting icon. I'm just gonna, and I don't want to close anything thinking I'll get rid of you completely, and that scares me even more. All right, well, I'm gonna just have to keep talking, and I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll figure it out. So I started sending out a newsletter every 6 months to the prisoners, and in the newsletter, I would reprint the best of the stories that were written to me in the previous 6 months from each prisoner, as well as listing all of the new stories that the new topics they could write on. Am I still cut off? I don't even know. I can't, because I can't see myself now. I don't even know.
No, you're perfect.
All right. Oh, I'm so sorry. I would love to show you a copy of the newsletter. That was my show and tell thing for the thing. It has disturbed me to no end that I don't see this here because it would just Zoom. Here we go. I found it. Okay. Not sure why, but so now you can, now at least I can see the screen. And here I am again. And I'm going to try sharing one more time. So I hit share screen. And I'm going to try in time. Let's see. I'm going to try it one last time. But you still don't see it. Do you see it now? Oh, now I don't hear anybody.
No,
Did I
Gary,
lose you?
Marta had put a link in the chat with the Prisoner Express newsletter. So people can click on that and take a look at it.
All right. So So this makes me feel really silly, but I will keep going because I do have a really good program to tell you about. And so I apologize again. So every 6 months we mail out a newsletter, and the newsletter is almost like a course listing for a semester, because what we realized is that people who are in a crazy making place need tools to be able to get through that. So every newsletter, on the second to last page, if you can open it up and look at it, on page 46, and the one that, the summer issue, has programs that prisoners can sign up for. In this case, we always have an ongoing poetry program, as you saw on the, boy, that I can't share the archives with you either. Now really bothers me. I realize that. Anyway, so every 6 months we put out the newsletter. The newsletter will have 9 to 15 projects that prisoners can sign up for. And over the next period of 16 months, we'll mail out that project. So the current projects they can sign up for example, is poetry, and they get lessons about poetry, and we collect their poetry, and every 6 months we publish an anthology of prisoner poetry, and the price of getting the anthology is to submit at least one poem, and we'll have anywhere from 400 to 500 people submit multiple poems, and we'll mail out the anthology to them. Another project we have ongoing is art. We always have an art project as well, and there we go. We always have it. I'm going to try one last time. Share screen. So we always have an art project, and we have art shows all around the state, and we've had art shows all around the country with the art that gets submitted. And we always have an ongoing journal project. We have hundreds of prisoners who are keeping journals for Okay, thank you. So finally it's there now. Can you see what I have now? Hello? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Ta-da!
Mm-hmm.
Yes, everything's good.
Yes, you see the screen?
Yep, you just need to enlarge it.
Then this will make it a little more. Okay, so the end of the newsletter, I showed you the end of the newsletter, the sign up page here, like they can sign up for the poetry project, a philosophy project, a journal program, a meditation program, a climate change program. They change every 6 months. So think of it as a semester, and this is the courses you want to enroll in. There was one about amphibians and frogs tied into climate change. We have a chess club, a rattle magazine is an art project, a book club. I heard you mention book clubs. In this case, we only have 107 or 500 copies of a book, and we send them out, and we have critical thinking questions that go with it. Now that I have my screen up, I feel I can now give you a much better understanding of what we do. So sorry for that delay.
Gary, your screen is up.
Every 6 months we mail out this newsletter.
But your audio is not working well.
Oh, geez. I am so sorry. Okay. This is what comes from probably, so I should probably stop sharing. Okay. Does that make my audio any better?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, then I'm just going to talk, and I will let it go from that. And I apologize for having even less to show you than I wanted to. So, sorry, I got a little discombobulated between being ill and having not work. So here's what I'm going to tell you. So every 6 months we mail out this newsletter. Currently, we have 4,000 active participants around the country. We've probably served about 35,000 to 40,000 people in the time we've been doing it, individuals. Many people have been with us for 5, 10, 20 years because many people are in prison for life. And when you're in prison for long periods of time, a lot of the programs that you hear about are not available to you. So we also deal with people who are short timers. We have county people, we have federal people, and we have state people. But in particular, the people who really value us are the people who don't have access to other materials, because when you're in prison, you'll always help you get a GED. But once you have your GED, pretty much things stop. And it's interesting for me to hear the presentations today, because I realize, and I guess I knew this all along, how much more superior New York State is in providing services for prisoners than most states. In most states, there are a myriad of problems in getting books and mail to people in prison. The thing to understand is, because I direct the Alternatives Library, as a library, I am allowed to send books to prisoners in many states where, like, a family member couldn't send it to them. The only way they could get books would be, say, through Amazon. And many people in prison have burnt like about every bridge they've had. That's why they're in prison. So there's no one to really order books for them from Amazon. So we started as this free book program, and what happened is, after a while, we had about 1,000 people writing us, waiting for books, and we did not have enough money to even begin to cover the postage, even though we get all the books donated. And that's another reason why we moved into offering these packets, because they're easier to produce and cheaper to mail. So what happens is, this program has been made up pretty much as we go along, as you can tell from my presentation, but we've used a combination of the resources we have and the information prisoners have been providing with us with over the years to create the programming. So, for example, like I said, we have an ongoing poetry program. And if you go to our website, prisonerexpress.org, and click on the archives button, you can see 2 years or so of poetry that we've scanned in. You could go to prisonerexpress.org, get on the archives, look at the art or the journals as well. So I'll explain the archives in a minute, but I just wanted to say that the poetry program started because prisoners started sending us poetry as a way of saying thank you. And one time, a student who was working at the library said, "Oh, I love this stuff. I'm going to put together an anthology." And we mailed it to everybody who was in it. And the response, this is 15 years ago now, we're on anthology number 29. They come out every 6 months. You know, the prisoners love seeing their work printed, and even if they weren't included, they were happy to read what other people wrote. And so we formulated that into a program. We have a lot of poetry support programs as well, but every 6 months we collect the poems that are sent to us. Volunteers read through them and create an anthology, and you can find that on our website as well. All the anthologies are printed there. The same thing with journals. We had so many prisoners writing us about their lives, and what they'd write all the time was that the same thoughts would go round and round and round, and eventually it's like they spiral down and kind of get flushed in how depressed and miserable they were. So we started an ongoing journal program, and we have people who've been participating. The idea was keep a journal for a year and see where it gets you, but so many people have been participating for many years. And again, we take journals from the last 2 years and we'll scan them online. Everybody gives permission to have their journals scanned online, and so people can get a sense of what people are, you know, writing and thinking. The meditation project, we've been doing that for at least 10 years. Every 6 months, we send out a packet with all kinds of tips on how to meditate, how to center yourself. In the last couple of packets, they've also included book clubs. We work with the Pema Chodron Foundation, and they donate like 500 copies of a particular book that she wrote, and we'll include that with our meditation project. We also have an ongoing chess club. I think chess is the best way to understand what it is we're accomplishing. We had so many people in prison requesting chess books. I did not know that prisoners love to play chess, but clearly they do. And we could never get enough chess club books. So what we started doing was providing a newsletter every 6 months that's full of chess strategy, chess tips, famous games of the past, you know, puzzles. And if you think about it, you could play chess in your living room, in a park, or in prison, and everything sort of disappears when you're playing. And I hope you're still there. Now my screen went blank. You're still there, yes?
We're all good.
Hello?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about screen went blank. So anyway, the the chess is the best way of understanding how meaningful activity can bring mental health in prison. It's like, instead of what most prisoners do is come in and think they're going to do their time by numbing down, by being quiet, by being small, by making they're hopefully for the time to just disappear, and they get horribly depressed and horribly dysfunctional. Whereas if you're doing something meaningful like playing chess, everything else disappears around you and you're in an island of creativity. And so all of our programs work that way. We always have creative writing programs. In this cycle, we have a screenwriting program. We have a former student who used to go to Ithaca College, who volunteered for us 10, 15 years ago, contacted me and said, oh, I'm a screenwriting professor now. I'd love to share tips on screenwriting. So in this next cycle, there'll be a packet on screenwriting. We always have an art project, like I say, and art is another one it really defines us in a way, because with all of our projects, it's not about being the best. It's about being creative. It's about exploring your creative side. And so what's happened over the years is every so often stuff does come through that's extraordinary, and it gets recognized for that. We've had pieces of art hanging in the Museum of Modern Art. We've had pieces of art traveling in exhibitions around the country because they've been so lauded. But it's not the point of the program. So it's always nice to celebrate when somebody's work is really good. But really, we have 4,000 people active, and we want them all to be doing something that's creative, that's life enhancing, that gives their life meaning. An important thing to understand is that we do this with very little money. I am a library employee, so I can put a lot of time to this in my library job, but the library doesn't have the funds for this. We're very fortunate that we've partnered with the work study program at Cornell, the public service center there, and they provide us with a lot of work study students every semester to help run the program. When it was just 50 people or so, it was nothing for me to do it on my own. When it's 4,000 people with 15 or so programs every cycle, the work study students make things very valuable. The other thing I really need to stress is how much volunteer activity we have making this program work. When I first started recruiting volunteers for the program, I thought, well, I'd get some students and I'd have them write a letter to a prisoner. And I thought, well, they're doing it to burnish their resume. They're doing it because they want some service credits, because they want to join a sorority or fraternity. And this is in the early years of the program. And one day I had a little dinner where I invited the volunteers to talk about their experiences in the program. And especially the Cornell students, were moved to tears. And I realized that a lot of people are struggling in this world, the students in particular, under a lot of pressure, and that writing to prisoners and sharing their stories with prisoners actually provided them with a lot of support. Cornell students in particular would say when they were struggling at Cornell and they told somebody, they'd always be told, work harder, do more. But when they told the prisoners what they were going through, they'd get like understanding and like, oh, hey, look at your life. You're doing really great. Yes, it's hard, but, take stock of yourself and do really well. And I realized the students were getting a lot out of the correspondence. And not only that, when the students wrote to prisoners, if say a student read a journal entry and wrote a comment or a letter to a prisoner about it, or saw a piece of art or a poem, and that's what we do at the library every day between 5 and 7 weekdays, we have open sessions for students to come in and be trained on how to respond to prisoner writings and art. And so I've jumped kind of 20 years into the program to say that now we have hundreds of volunteers at the university, at Ithaca College they come from the high schools, and from the community, who come in and write letters to prisoners about their art, their poetry, their journals. And we have a system. If you go to our website, again, I'm sorry if I'm not showing it to you right now, but there's a place where volunteers register and they all get assigned a number. So when they write to the prisoner, they can use whatever name they want, but as long as they include the number, the prisoners write back, care of the library. They send the letter to us, and we have a team of people who will scan letters to all the different volunteers who are writing prisoners. So there's this ongoing activity. what happened is we had people coming to the library before the pandemic to do this, and that's how it got started. When the pandemic happened, the volunteers are going, well, how are we going to do this now? And that's when we started the online archives that I'm not showing you, that Christine had taken some pictures from. I wished I could show you. I knew my internet access at home was bad, but it usually works okay for Zoom meetings. But I see today it's not, and I apologize for that. But we will have now a place for people online to come and look at the same journals and art and poetry as we have in the library, though at the library we have many more years worth of it online. We just put the most recent 2 years, and on the screens it will have everybody's contact information, and there's also the instructions on how to write through our program. So if any of you in your libraries are wanting to have any kind of volunteer programs for people to do something like this, they can actually plug into our archives and write letters to our prisoners and never use their real name if they don't want to, because some people get nervous about writing to people in prison. But they can just get assigned a number and we will scan their letters to them. And since we've been doing that, I know we generate hundreds, if not thousands of letters a year for sure. Hundreds of letters a week sometime are mailed out to these 4,000 prisoners. And you can see the profound changes that happen in them. One, for having materials that spur them to do things, and then two, for being acknowledged and recognized by people in the, quote, free world for what they're doing. It keeps people connected. I have, again, hundreds and thousands of testimonial letters from prisoners saying how much this little bit means. And I explain to the volunteers when they come in that, you know, some of these guys write they haven't gotten a letter in 10 years, or they've never gotten a letter from anybody. And that when they get the letter, they can read it many times, so they can put it away and pull it out at different times when times are hard. And that, as simple as it seems to the person writing the letter, I use the analogy that, think about the prisoner giving them a glass of water and they might say thank you, but, or somebody giving me a glass of water and I'd say thank you, but put me in the desert for a week and give me a glass of water. And all of a sudden it becomes this very profound act. And so these letters that these prisoners get from all of the volunteers are really profound. Many of them are looking for long-time pen pals, and we don't supply that, but we do something better, because we say by participating in our programs and submitting your work, our volunteers will look at that and send you a letter. And sometimes these like mini pen pal relationships will last for a while, because our volunteers are sort of transitory. They're often students moving through, though we do have a lot of community members who volunteer, and they tend to stay longer. But the prisoners have come to really appreciate these little mini pen pal sessions with people, and it spurs their creativity beyond what you could imagine, because they have so few opportunities. There is so few resources. Again, New York State shines really from what I hear. I was just at the recent Friends of the Library book sale in Ithaca, which is the pre-sale. They let librarians come in and choose books. And I ran into two different prison librarians from Auburn, and maybe it was 5 Points, who were selecting books for their library. Most of the people who write say there is no library at my prison, or I have no access to books in my prison. It's a different world outside of New York State. It's also really hard to get materials into prisons. They've become much more limited in the mail they have accepted. I spend a lot of time pulling my hair out over the new censorship policies. And I bring it up today to you guys because you're librarians, and I know librarians care about censorship issues. And it's not just that they control what the prisoners see, which is a piece of censorship. And in prison, you're kind of allowed to do that. You can say no hardcover books, only softcover, like we heard. But they actually stop publications from coming in as well that should not be censored, because, oh, this is really a big story, but I want to share it with you, because it's all becoming commodified. I've heard all this talk about, do prisoners have internet access, being spoken about do not have internet access, but what they do have is tablets. And tablets are provided by private companies, and these private companies are making tremendous amounts of money selling movies and music to prisoners. But part of the contract that the private companies take on is supplying the mail to prisoners too. So in many states, you can't mail a letter directly to a prisoner. You mail it to an address of this private company, and the letter is scanned and sent to the prisoner. And the things with that are problematic, one for the prisoner, is it's very divorced. It's really different holding a scanned letter in than it is holding something someone you care about wrote you and feeling the embossed letter on the paper or smelling the person's scent on the letter. But even more, they limit the amount of pages that can be scanned. So for me, who sends in a newsletter, all of a sudden they say, oh, we can't accept that here because it's too many pages. But then you send it to the prison and the prison says, oh, we can't accept it, send it to the scanner. So every state, and this is where it gets even crazier, there's no one uniform standard. Every state is coming up with their own different standard of what it has to be done. So national programs like mine or religious organizations that send material into prison, they're all like kind of getting shut out of the prison world state by state. And there are workarounds, but they're very complicated, and you just get lucky when they work, because when you call the prison authorities, they themselves don't know what to tell you because it's all so new, this commodification and tabletizing, I guess it's called, of the prisons, that they haven't really thought through how organizations can send their mail. They very well have thought through how personal mail gets sent. Remember, I told you we have thousands of personal letters being sent to prisoners through our programs, through the work that prisoners do, and they all get in. And I think the reason they all get in is they want friends and family writing prisoners, because they're the ones who are supplying them with the money to buy the movies and the music on the tablets. I spoke to a prisoner the other day. Because I have tablets, so they can call me. So I get calls from prisoners all day long. And I was asking him, what do you pay to watch a movie? He says, oh, my movie, 48 hours, I get it for 48 hours and it costs $10. And if you think about millions of people in prison watching movies to pass the time, and now that they have tablets, often they don't have as much access to books. That's one of the things too. And they do have some free books on tablets, but not many. The angle I'm playing right now is that the tablets also are required to provide some free services for prisoners. So what they have are these closed, as someone described earlier, these closed systems where some material can be created that can be on the tablet, but it's not internet access, but it's an app that's controlled within a system that the prison controls. So we're in the process of working with a couple of different organizations to develop apps so our material can be on these tablets, because the paper mail thing is getting curtailed tremendously. So that's my rant on why prisons are really doing a disservice to people. When you don't provide educational opportunities for prisoners and you expect them to come out different than how they went in, it's a fantasy. And I have so many letters again that document how little opportunity prisoners do have and why they appreciate so much the opportunities we provide them. So, without being able to show you stuff, or maybe I could show you stuff, but not talk, I wonder if there are any questions for me. I apologize that I couldn't show you stuff, and that my illness and my computer stuff has kind of caused us to be a little more disorganized than I had hoped it to be. But I hope I've given you the gist of it. PrisonerExpress.org is our website, and you can find out how to volunteer, or you can look at our archives that way. And that's sort of what I got for you today, unless you have questions. Anybody there?
So, yeah, Gary, I did see a question here from Allison, and she asked, what can we do to fight the programs that charge prisoners for communication like letters and telephone calls and media, books, movies, music?
I wish I could answer that. Like, there are so many different services being offered through these tablets, like, and in a way it's very convenient for the individual prisoner. I get electronic messages now from prisoners all the time through companies that allow them to send text messages through the company. Everything goes through the company, but they charge like 10 cents a message, so it doesn't seem that bad. But like, for example, for me, I can print a 48-page newsletter and mail it for $1.50, and I have 4,000 people. When I call one of the companies that wants me to send them an electronic copy and they're going to print it and deliver it, they want me to pay $4.50 per copy for that. So it's like, it takes my budget and blows it right up. I have not figured out what to do. That's why I'm trying to create a free app that can go on the tablets that prisoners are getting. This commodification, I'm sure the prisons are getting money from this. These tablet companies pay the prisons money to be able to give the prisoners tablets, right? Like, it's a money-making thing for everybody. And I don't know how you stop that commodification. The only thing I can say is you can still write personal mail to people, and that's the only, you have to send it, you have to know what address to send it to, and which gets confusing for families. Many prisoners have 2 and 3 addresses depending on whether it's a newsletter, a book, a piece of personal mail. The United States Postal Service has very little to do now with prisons in some way. It used to be I could just send everything to the post office and everything would get delivered to the prison and the prisoner would get it. But it just isn't that way anymore.
Okay, thanks. I have another question here from Krista Briggs. She asks, have you ever considered doing a project on Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, you know, we did. We actually, I can send you a copy of it. We had again. So the thing to understand, when I said we make this up as we go along, I look at who my students are, who are volunteering, who are working, and I find out what they're passionate about. And I ask them if they would like to create a packet about what they're passionate about. And so we had a student 2 years ago, Jamie, who was really into, virtual games, or I don't know what, there's a different name for him, but, and he created his own little virtual worlds and sent it in packet form so people could play games through these packets. That it'd be a very popular thing. Dungeons and Dragons and those games are very popular for prisoners. So we have created them, and sometimes we recycle our programs. We try to create new programs every 6 months. And once in a while, when a program is really great, a couple years later, we'll pull it out and we'll reoffer it again. But yeah, when I listed the programs that we offered this cycle, understand that it's just this cycle. In previous cycles, we had a programming on storytelling, or we had a project on origami, or we'll have a project on cooking. So every 6 months, our offerings change.
Hey, Gary, I have another question for you. We were talking about the tablets, and it was a comment here, and it said, in New York State, tablets and facilities are loaded with public domain books. Basically, what you would find on the Project Gutenberg, which they have access to. Incarcerated individuals continue to rely heavily on their general libraries and interlibrary loans from the public libraries. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, again, I think they're pointing out that New York State is really advanced. At the alternatives library, I'll send things out on interlibrary loan to prisons sometimes, right? I mean, so I understand that New York State is way ahead of the game. Maybe people complain about taxes, but maybe taxes help us provide prisoners with resources, right? And a lot of states, their resources are not there. And when I ask them if there are some books on there are a few, right? They do have some books on their tablets, there's no doubt. But again, when you say, oh, what do you do if you have an illness and you want to get a diagnosis, you're not going to find that on your public domain book. We have a service where people send us letters and ask for specific books, and we can't always match them up with exactly what they want, but we ask them to go by subject, and we can send information in that way. But so there are like some public domain books, I'm sure, on all tablets. You would hope. I haven't seen them, but most prisoners have very little in the free part of their tablets right now, and they have a lot in their paid products of their tablets, from what I hear from the people who write me. The states in particular that I hear from that are very tablet oriented are Florida, Texas, Missouri. A lot of states are becoming tablet. There's still many states where I can just send my newsletter in easily. That's sort of what my problem is that there's no one system that works for all prisoners, and it gets balkanized where you have to create programs based on the state or based on whether it's a county or federal prison in that state, right? So there's no easy way just to mail things to people. They started quite a while ago acting as if paper is a problem. And I've been told that prisoners are going to make knives out of paper, and that's why we have to limit newsletters to prisoners. They've started making it that you can't put a sticker with an address on the packet, but you have to print the address on the packet, which becomes much more confusing and complicated once a 48-page packet to have one page specifically with just that prisoner's name printed on it as part of the packet so it could be mailed. And they say again that there's too much contraband being smuggled in on the glue on these stickers. But you can put stamps on it and you can seal an envelope. So it's not exactly making sense, but it's just the rules in the prison.
There was a question earlier. It said, what can we do to fight these programs that charge prisoners like letters and telephone calls?
What can we do? Well, if I knew, I would tell you. I have to tell you, I make a couple of phone calls a week to different states all the time, trying to understand what to do. What we do is we have a lot of people writing letters to prisoners, and prisoners write letters back to them on paper. Though many prisoners really love the tablet piece of it, and they have the money, and they really appreciate the quickness in which they can communicate with me by sending me a message that they have to pay for, right? But that's their choice. But it's more the people who don't have money, who just sit with a tablet that they can't do anything with. And then there's things where they can't get access to their tablets or they can't charge their tablets. See, because you have a book, you can read it all the time. You can't charge your tablet and you got nothing. And so that's why I like the paper newsletters too, because they circulate. So how this program started is all word of mouth. I've never advertised it. I wasn't really looking to create this program, but we kept getting mail from the prison system, and now we're in all 50 states. And it's word of mouth, and it was other newsletters. What prisoners would do was they would write to like the prison resource guide that came out somewhere, and they'd say, oh, let me tell you about this great program that I'm participating in. And then we get listed in these resource guides that were also able to be mailed into prisoners pretty easily. But now those resource guides have the same problem I do in getting into prisons. So the way we spread now is more friends and family are Googling services for their loved ones because there is nothing in their prisons, and they come across one of our programs and they sign up for the person online to, oh, please include my loved one in your programming. Or again, it gets shared. The information does get shared. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter what they tell you the rules are in mail rooms. It seems to be whatever they want to do. So states have policies, and then I mail it in anyway, and it gets in, even when it's not supposed to. Or states don't have policies, but it doesn't get in because somebody's got to be in their bonnet. It takes one person in Florida, for example, to see something and say, oh, I don't think this is appropriate, and they can put a hold on it throughout the state, and then you appeal it, and the appeal is I win the appeal because there's nothing that they shouldn't have in it. But then by then it's 2 months later and the thing is out of date, or the mailrooms have lost it and it doesn't get delivered, even though you win the appeal. So it's a funny thing when you call the prisoners to get help. 1 out of every 10 or 15 people really care and want to help and make a difference. 8 out of the 15 times, all you do is get dead air and get circulated from one answering machine to another. And then the other times you just get people who don't really seem to care, right? It's really tough. What our thing is we're trying to change the system one relationship at a time. We're changing the world one relationship at a time. And we tell all the prisoners who feel that our kindness has made a big difference in them that we don't need anything from them but to pass the kindness forward. So we're just trying to get prisoners to appreciate one another. One of the things, because I couldn't show you this when I was trying to show you the newsletter, it's a little aside, but I told you we have this project. Really, it's the basis of our whole program. It's this theme writing program. Every month there's a word theme and a picture theme. The word theme is a true story, and the picture theme can be anything, true or false, fantasy. And then we'll send out this packet to the prisoners with everybody's themes. I get so many letters from the prisoners writing to me about, because I can't write to one another, writing to me about the themes that they read and how much they appreciate these other writers. And then even in their themes, they'll sneak in shout outs to other authors in the program and say how much they wish they could write like them, or, just acknowledge each other. And so I think when we do a lot of our programs, I guess I didn't say this either. So when we send out a philosophy program or we send out a history program, they're full of critical thinking questions. They're not just reading, they're critical thinking questions. When we do a book club, it's full of critical thinking questions. The prisoners send in their responses, and then we create compilation documents of the most interesting stuff that we found came in, and then we mail it back out again. So there's a big call and response thing, and it builds community because they see their names and they see other names that they recognize. And it feels like somebody, even though they don't. That's what they write. Like the author's like, I feel like I know this person because of what they've been writing. So we're really working at building community. When you're in prison, if you have a roommate and you've been with them for 2 years, or you become good friends or whatever, and they move them somewhere else, and they're always moving people in prison, it is a very transient environment. If you move, you're not allowed to write to that person. They're dead to you as far as anything the prisoners is concerned. Prisoners aren't allowed to write letters to one another. They're not allowed to communicate to one another once they leave the prison. And even in the same prison, they can't write to one another. So our newsletter provides continuity in a world that is very broken up. It's really important in prisons to keep people isolated, right? I think there's a lot of hatred generated just because it keeps people isolated. By people not liking one another, they're not going to ever, work together. And in some way, maybe that's sort of an effective way to run a prison. The other disturbing thing about prison is how many prisoners are completely over-medicated, and they just want to keep them quiet. And the thing about seeing doctors, prisoners write to me about that all the time, about how they put in for doctors, but they could wait months. They talk about watching people die as they wait to see a doctor, or they talk about the doctor giving them nothing, but then they have to pay $5 for the doctor visit, and that they earn like 12 cents an hour at their work. So they start adding up how much they have to work to get that doctor to come in and do nothing, and they just do nothing, right? And so there's a dirty, ugly thing going on in prisons. Again, I'm not saying that's happening in New York State. I have a lot of New York State prisoners write me, and they aren't suffering in the way that prisoners in other states are suffering. So, sorry, I got off on a tangent there.
Gary, I'm going to change this a little bit, change it up a little bit. Do you work with juveniles at all?
Well, I don't. This program began years ago because the Durland Alternatives Library had an outreach program at McCormick Secure Center, which is a juvenile facility down the road from Ithaca, where juveniles who have been or treated as adults who've convicted as they've done crimes so serious they have to be isolated and in prison. And we had a bunch of writing programs with them for a number of years, and that's sort of almost the origin of this program was that. But then those programs when the administration changed many years back, it became much harder for us to go into those prisons, and we aren't working with juveniles in that way anymore. Though we do work with a lot of people who went to prison who are doing life without parole, and they were 17, 18, and 19 when they went in. And so that's a whole other kind of, now you can see that calling people 17, 18, and 19 as juveniles, but now many of them went into secure facilities and are doing long-term stints in them, and we work with them.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions that came in. So Gary, let me put my video on. So Gary, thank you for this.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, I apologize. I wish my internet had been better and my screen had been better. Like I say, I had to stay home sick from work today, and that just kind of changed my plans.
It worked out. It worked out really well.
Okay.
We have a raffle, and we lost a couple people along the way, but I'm wondering, Gary, if you could choose a number between 4 and 32, and that will be the winner of our raffle.
It's 21.
21, huh? Okay. Now, I was supposed to do this the easy way, but I have to count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Megan Doyle. Megan Doyle, I will be in touch with you. You are the winner of Reading Behind Bars. And I'll be in touch with you so you can give me, yay! So you can give me the address to mail this book to. Okay? All right. Thank you, Gary. And
all right. Thank you. Again, I apologize for my computer problems.
Thank you very much. And we have a special, where is she? Okay, so Gary, thank you very much. Krista Briggs has been a participant here, but Christine, would you like to tell us a little bit about Krista? Hi, Krista.
Sure, yes. So a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I learned about a program that Krista Briggs with the Malone Public Library has set up with, I can't remember the name of the prison. But anyway, Anna and I were talking about it last week, and we thought that's a great program. But we, already had our program set today, and then we saw that Krista was in the audience participating as an attendee. So we asked if she would be willing to share her program with us, and she said she would. So Krista will now share a little bit about her new program, and it's really fascinating. I think you'll like to hear about it. So Krista, take it away.
Well, it was a one-time thing, unfortunately, and I would really love to see it become a regular thing. What I did was I got a grant through the Northern New York Library Network, which was actually the conference that you saw my presentation at, Christine. And the grant was to purchase children's books for the children of incarcerated individuals. And I had the incarcerated individuals sign up, and they could sign up as many children as they wanted, basically any relation. And I told them any age because I wanted to give books to children. I didn't really care how old they were. I got 18 kids signed up, Some of them were grandchildren, some of them were children. And I bought them all books. Luckily, through the grant, it was generous enough. I was able to buy, I think, 3 books for each child. I tried to pick them out individually. On the form that they signed up on, it asked about their interests and their reading level. So I tried to find things specific to each child, and was conscious of cultural and racial diversities when I did so. I partnered with a local bookstore, the St. Lawrence University's Brewer Bookstore. So it was even better because I was buying locally instead of through like Amazon or something. And then I shipped, originally I was supposed to give the books to the children when they came up for visits. This was at Bear Hill Correctional, by the way. But I got a lot of feedback from the individuals that their children didn't come to visitation for various reasons, travel being the biggest reason, but some of them also just didn't want their children to see them in prison. So I coordinated with the administration, and instead we mailed the books to the children, which I think actually turned out even better because it was a bit of a surprise for the kids, and every kid likes getting mail in their name. So they each got 3 books in the mail and a letter in it explaining the program to the caregiver so that they weren't confused as to why there were suddenly random books in the mail. And the response was really cool. Within a week of shipping the books out, I had individuals coming into the library to say, Miss B, my kid just got the books, and they called me and they said, Daddy, you sent me books. Daddy, you thought of me. I love the book. Can we read it together? And they would spend time on the phone reading to their kids and their grandkids the books that I had sent them. I bought duplicates of most of those books to keep in the library so that at any time the individual who signed their child up could check out the book that their child received and read along with their kid. And it was just a really, really cool program. And if anyone wants to work with me to somehow make this a larger thing that happens every year for every prison in the state, my goodness, that would be a dream come true for me, because it was just really cool. I based a lot of my reasoning for doing this on studies that have been done. As most of us as librarians know, book ownership is very important to early literacy. And as most people with any experience in prison know, approximately 70% of the prison population in the United States reads below a 4th grade reading level, which doesn't bode well for their children at home. So I thought this was a good way to change that, or at least attempt to. And of course, I didn't really have any way to study the results, but the testimonials I got back from the incarcerated individuals who signed their children up was, I mean, that was all I needed. That it was such a high to do that. And not long after I finished that program, I actually left the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision and now work in a public library. So I am happy to be the public library connection for any prison librarian, any senior librarian in New York State or even outside of New York State that is looking for somebody who understands what they're going through, the challenges they face, the restrictions that they have to work within. I'm your girl.
Crystal, would you be able to put your contact information in the chat? Someone was asking for that.
Sure, I'll put my email address in the chat. There you go.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
Maybe next time we will have you completely on the docket. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Christine, would you like to close it out?
Yes. So that concludes our program, and we thank you all for joining us today. We thank all of our panelists who participated in the great work that they're doing. We thank Gary for sharing his work and Krista for joining in, even though she didn't join up or didn't participate to do so, but we thank her for that as well. We will be sending out the recording sometime next week when we get it all ready to do. And we do have an evaluation form that we'll be sharing. I see Anna just put that up. We ask that you please complete that. We appreciate your comments and thoughts on that as well. And with that, thank you, and we'll end.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Yeah.
Keep sharing those resources.